Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Attack on Titan anime review. This one is going to be for Season 4, Part 2, Episode 7. Interesting episode, mostly sort of set up, more of a transition episode as we obviously start the action, realize we can't really deal with the Wall Titans like right now, and we have to really sort of characterize and build up the idea of, I guess, we are going to need to join forces with everyone to have any chance of stopping this. This is borderline sort of unassailable threat here, and it feels like even if you unite the whole world, it's only a low percentage chance of winning. So they're going in depth in this episode of just getting across the helplessness of the situation, that the best anyone can do right now is basically just save people who in Paradis who've been injured by rubble. And they do bring up right at the start, like a lot of people, the discussions of people being like, no, Eren killed my son because he made this happen, the walls fell down, they injured people. Other people making the point that those were sort of necessary sacrifices because ultimately the rumbling here is protecting our people here. And if he didn't do this, we were all sort of destined to die because the outside world hates us. I did appreciate this episode kind of bringing up that kind of nuance to the situation here, which is that I suppose if this is just Eren's sort of view, his ideal here, which is just to use the rumbling to kill everyone except the people of Paradis, and that's his end game, then we sort of at least know why that is the case, and it's because the rest of the world hates Eldians, which I suppose we saw why they did because of the backstory that we got with Ymir, and that isn't going to heal anytime soon. And I'm very interested to see what they do over these coming episodes, because I'm guessing, based on the last scene of the episode, the fact that Hanji is going to be talking to Captain, is it Magath, I guess the leader of Marley. So they're your two sort of leaders, kind of, I guess, going to sort of begin the alliance style thing. The question obviously is going to be, our main cast of characters here from Marley and Paradis may end up working together to win this fight. But is that changing the minds of like the entire population of like basically the main landmass of the world? Not necessarily. And Eren doing what he's doing here is, I suppose, effectively doubling down on why they would have a reason to hate Eldia and Eldians. Like, that doesn't change this. I wonder what the plan is for actually, by the end, finding some way to actually achieve peace. Because even if you, I suppose, do the technical thing of like sort of eliminate Titans, and you sort of get around the idea of like the 9 Titans are gone, and Eldians now no longer can or even really have the ability to turn into Titans because the power is gone. The history still seems to be the thing that is causing all of these issues, and it's going to take a lot to get past those problems. And that's where I'm kind of wondering, like, even outside of just the main character motivations, how are they just going to, in a way, bring that to a close? Because that's what sort of Eren, very realistically, I suppose, is fighting about here. Because, like, yeah, obviously, like, the likes of, I guess, Gabi is going to team up with, like, the Survey Corps, and I guess we'll get to see them fighting side by side at some stage. I think that just feels kind of obvious at this stage based on what they've been doing. It's obviously going to take quite a while for Armin, Mikasa, Jean, and all these people to realize that, yeah, we do actually have to fight with our enemies effectively to face Eren, and just come to that conclusion that this is what we need to do. So a lot of, I suppose, just little scenes here for the most part. The main thing in this episode, obviously, is the kind of Annie returns, and you have to give her characterization to bring her back up to speed and get her like back on track, because it's been a long time with Annie since she's been involved in this. But we'll get to that in a second. lots of little things like, Gabby saying goodbye to Kaya. That arc I thought was actually quite well done. Their little sort of back and forths now that they've got past the like almost trying to kill each other aspect of like, Gabby reveals that my actual real name is Gabby, and Kaya's like, oh, but I like Mia better, and they just have that little bit of they'll argue with each other, and it's a fun dynamic, and that there are actually friends now, and they actually had a bit of the discussion about all of this, and there's, again, individual characters that we get to learn, realizing the errors of just going along with sort of history causes us to hate these people because of these reasons. That's interesting. That's pretty good writing. Flock, I suppose, gets properly kind of put in charge here to a degree, because I'm guessing we are not going to see much of Eren as a character until right at the end of the series. Now that he's part of just the main Titan thing, it is kind of telling they really haven't come back to him at all. There are characters discussing his actions, but we are not cutting to him specifically at all in these episodes. So Flock is kind of here to, I suppose, act as the leader of the Eren kind of loyalists, who are the ones who are most in agreement with Eren's plan, which is to kind of restore Eldia, prioritize that at all costs, and if the rumbling destroys the rest of the world, so be it. It's obviously like a kind of brutal sort of character turn for the character, but I thought it was kind of well done, and I like that they're actually giving Flock kind of decent characterization, in that it seems like the effect of him being one of the only survivors from that attack, the sort of Beast Titan baseball attack with all the rocks, has basically made him he'll do anything to get into a situation where sort of, he is on the kind of winning side. And so he sees, peace for Eldians after all of this as the way to sort of achieve that. And you can tell by like the way he's trying to get John to join him, of like, hey, I remember you. Like, you always wanted to be in the military police and sort of stay out of the action. Well, you're a hero now. When this is done, we've won, basically. When this all resolves itself, you can do that. And it's fine. Like, that's what he wants. And while he's sort of that character you kind of love to hate, I like that they've made him into something here. That he wasn't just used for the choice at the end of like season 3. He's actually got a surprising role here. The position I feel he's being put in is that he is going to have like a death scene, I think, at some point, that's going to be very satisfying based on, I suppose, whoever does it or whatever, that he's going to be going absolutely crazy. Someone's going to come in, take him out, and it's going to be this sort of like, I'm glad someone needed to do that. Like, someone really did need to do that, but like, whoa, that was sort of brutal and tragic in some extent. So I can see him maybe being set up somewhat like that, because it feels like he's maybe a little bit too far gone at this point to maybe change his mind, and that he's not necessarily going to join up with everyone else to go against Eren. He feels like the most loyal to Eren, even though I'm guessing Eren probably doesn't care too much about him. So there's that. I suppose getting to the final scene, Piek, Magath talking to Hanji, and then also revealing that Levi is alive. Obviously, he's still sort of asleep, unconscious, covered in bandages, but he's alive and mostly intact. We'll see what the extent of his injuries are. That was, I think, to be expected. So they're going to have a talk here, because there's no point in these two little groups fighting here. And that's the conclusion that's going to have to come into play here. Of Hanji realizes that all the high-ups have been killed on our side. That effectively makes me the leader. I suppose when she comes into contact with the other kind of higher-up people, she's going to realize she effectively is the leader. Magath is the leader of Marley. There's going to have to be some sense for, yes, we all have to work together to prevent this, to save the world. Again, it's like, okay, until we see, I suppose, the details of it, there's not too much to say, but it was more of just a reintroduction of, yeah, this was like episode 1 of part 2, I think, was a lot of this stuff, Hanji and Levi leaving, and they're only coming back in now. You did need to do a little bit of a dynamic reintroduction for the most part. Other plot we did get right at the end, so the second last scene was Connie on a horse taking Falco out to his hometown, and we get the sort of dynamic where, as was set up, that when you first wake up from first becoming a Titan shifter, your memories are all over the place. So he's managed to sort of convince Falco that, oh, I just found you like this, you're suffering from amnesia, I'm bringing you somewhere to help you, and hopefully your memories will come back. He's trying to be like real nice to him, but you can tell Falco's memories are slowly beginning to come back, and I'm guessing they'll come back right at a key moment. Obviously for Connie, this is building up to, I guess, a pretty big choice here of, is he willing to, when he gets down to it, to sacrifice Falco to sort of bring his mother back? Or, he's saying he's a soldier and he's kind of almost bigging himself up to do it. But I think when he gets there and realizes sort of just what he's going to have to do in terms of feed Falco to his mother, I think he's going to realize that he's probably better than this and that it's maybe time to say goodbye to his mother or something like that. Armin is going out to speak to Connie. This seems to be where Armin's heading, and Armin's making the decision of he's going to stop Connie from doing this, which I guess brings up that scene, the Mikasa Armin scene. For Mikasa, again, it's another character really sort of, in a way harshly kind of telling her, please think for yourself, for once. So that seems to be the direction they're going with Mikasa, is that I guess her specifically making the decision that she will have to join the side that needs to take out Eren. That will be a major decision for her in terms of proving that she can actually make her own choices, not just in general as a character, but in this case specifically choices that go against Eren, because of the whole Ackerman attachment to a specific person who you can't disobey type thing. I guess that's where they're going. I'm interested because I think Mikasa definitely needs some character development. She's a cool character. I like her, but she definitely needs some depth. Whereas Armin, I like that he's trying to be sort of logical, but then when Mikasa mentions Eren, he freaks out and just acknowledges the full scope of this situation and how chaotic it is. The military structure is gone. We don't know what the situation is with Eren. Interesting, like he specifically mentions Annie, and Hitch mentions within that sort of sequence. I know Annie mentions that basically Hitch and Armin were the only two people who really spoke to her. So they're obviously trying to create that sort of specific dynamic between those two, which they did sort of play on in season 1 when you go back to it. Yeah, the two of them talking was actually kind of a little bit of an interesting thing. So we'll see where that goes. But it was interesting to see just a very panicked Armin, but one who is at the point where he will make these sort of key decisions. And then he does, if I remember correctly, he does say the thing of the decision to save me over Erwin was the wrong decision. I should have died in that moment. Which is a pretty harsh thing for him to say, but I guess he, like they often do with Armin, is going to sort of get to a key moment and actually step up and make a key decision. So I think that's where they're heading with his character. Which brings us to the Annie stuff. So we get the whole idea of Hitch realizes, oh, water, what's going on here, and eventually finds Annie. It seems like Annie is straight back to her ways from the end of season 1 of just sneaking around, taking people out. But Hitch realizes that, wait, you're super weak right now. You can't really do anything. And even the threat of oh, I've cut myself, I'm a Titan shifter. Hitch is still sort of I think you're too weak to even transform at all. So, I'll go ahead and sort of help you escape, just in case. But it's interesting to see Hitch actually be very in control of this situation and not overly caring of Annie's threats. So they do actually get to have this sort of conversation, and And the really obvious thing of like Hitch just brings up like sort of in a way like, do you feel any remorse over like what you did, the amount of people that you killed during that like end of season 1 type stuff? And Annie, who they basically reveal wasn't like completely fully conscious the entire time, but wasn't just like asleep the entire time either. She remembers bits and pieces of things people said, in that like when they were directly speaking to her she seemed to be more conscious, but then when she was left alone the sort of flow of time just sort of went into nothing. So that sort of explains why she hasn't like completely like lost her mind, but she it is their clever way of allowing her to be immediately like up to speed on things, so she doesn't need to get the whole story explained to her, because Armin and Hitch just talking about events kind of reveals this is what's happened, so she's not so out of the loop. So we get the idea of like she does actually care for people, because this was always the thing with Annie, is that she felt like really detached as a character. It's like, does she care about anyone? We've since learned that, okay, she was part of the same team with Reiner and Berthold and so on. So she was a warrior candidate. Cool. But then we get sort of the backstory. And again, we always knew like her father trained her in little bits and pieces. But here we find out, like, at least I don't remember finding this out, is that her father isn't actually like her biological father. He sort of just took her in, raised her specifically to be a warrior candidate. So this is how she gets sort of brought into the Marleyan warrior side of things. And she immediately presents like her training as just all he cared about was effectively earning that honorary Marleyan status by, you know, making me into a warrior. But on the day she is to go out on her mission where she could die, she, I suppose, finally realized that he actually cared about her as a daughter, and she herself actually cared about him as her father. And so that sort of, you know, woke her up. And then she's had so much time to consider what she's done and what has happened since being in the crystal, that she's come to realize she actually does care about people more than she ever really did before. So she wants to see her father again. That's a really specific kind of motivation that she has now. And I'm guessing her meeting Armin again will probably also be a kind of significant thing, just because she has this conversation with Hitch now. And then Armin was the other character who was actually mentioned. So, you know, she'll be used, you know, as the female Titan. We'll see how they go about, you know, the use of that specific Titan. Is there anything more to it, given that it feels like we've moved into like some crazy Titan powers that the female Titan feels like you need to have a bit more than that to compete these days type thing. So they're just kind of like heading out. So we'll see where the resolution on that is. I think specifically they're going to try and find Annie's father. So I think that's the situation. So we'll see where all this ends up playing out. So that's the setup for things. And like I said, I think for the next like episode or two, we are building towards like, okay, we're going to have some sort of an alliance, come up with a plan to prevent as much damage as possible when they hit land on like Marley and so on. There's a lot of characters that we need to sort of have little arcs with the really obvious plot that I think is going to happen straight away being the whole Connie, Falco, and Armin is heading out there as well. That plot. So Connie, I guess, might get some spotlight quite heavily in the next episode. Falco, we'll see what's going on with him. But yeah, solid episode. Definitely a bit of a change of pace from the other episodes so far this season. But I think we're building up again to the renewal of the sort of action happening again that will actually be the finale. Hopefully by then, towards the end of the season, we'll know better what the actual ending is going to be. Just with regards to like, I think everyone is aware of the fact that Season 4 Part 2 is not going to end the show, but we don't know if it's Season 4 Part 3, if they're doing like a Season 5 as like a brief kind of finale type thing, or if they're doing a movie to end it off. That's what we still need to know. But yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode. They're my thoughts, and that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.